Okay, everybody. Um, I got a request to do a video for atmospheric aircraft that I recently made. So I'm gonna do a couple little modifications to it, let you get a close-up view of it, and then I'm gonna launch it with an actual crew complement and send it on a little a shakedown flight to figure out its cruising altitude and so on and so forth. So let's go ahead and begin. All right, so let's go into the airplane hangar. Wait a minute. I forgot to turn off the game sounds, game music. Wish you could still have the birds chirping but lose the music. That would be super. Oh my god. Sorry about that. I gotta find it. Found it. Ah. Okay, so what I want to do is add some scientific instruments. First I need a communicatron. And I need this. Where's the... there. Okay. Alright, that looks pretty good. So, essentially what I did was I tied my landing gear button to flaps. So when I put the landing gear down, the flap should deploy. Ideally, anyway. And then when I hit it again, they should go back up, and so on and so forth. So, I've got ladder, got lights, got communicatron, need a crew, so we're going to grab... we're going to put a scientist and an engineer in the back, and I'm going to go with this guy. And I'm going to go with this scientist. And I'm going to take 2 pilots. And that should do it. Let's go ahead and launch. Alright. So let's spool up. Lights on. Brakes off. Throttle up. rotate. Gears up. Alright, so the idea here is we're just going to climb out, try and figure out what the service altitude is for this guy. And once we've done that, I'll have a better idea of what this thing's capable of. Alright, we're going to turn off the runway heading. Start a climb. And let's do some science. Not much. Alright. Alright, let's throttle all the way up and see what this bad boy's capable of. Alright, looks like we're climbing through about 4,000 meters at the moment, which is probably about 12,000 feet, give or take. And I would think that this style of aircraft, kind of modeled after a Learjet, by the way, this is called the Kerbal, if you will. It's modeled after an aircraft that should probably be able to have at least a cruising altitude of about 30,000 feet. So that would be about, give or take, 10,000 meters. So I'll be happy with at least that for performance, which I believe it should be able to do with no problem. Anything above that, I'm not real sure of, so we will see. Now, granted, this is probably going to be boring for some of you, and if you would like to tune out now, don't do it. Well, you can, because, I mean, really, I'm just going to be climbing, and I'm not really going to be doing many inputs. But what I can do is I can talk about a little bit about the aerodynamic forces kind of in play here. So with the way I built the aircraft, obviously I was trying to, I didn't just kind of throw parts on there and this is what I ended up with. I built this purposefully, correct? Right? So essentially what I started with was the fuselage, and then I put the wings on, and then I put the engines on, and I was trying to determine what, you know, how high, you know, angled they would be. I ended up settling with that and realized that it would probably be smart for me to go with a T-tail design, and that's what I got here. So the center of mass, and it looks like you can see my cursor, the center of mass is about right here, okay? And the center of lift, as in its current configuration, is about right here, right? So typically when I build aircraft, I try and make the center of lift back like right behind the center of mass, almost touching. It keeps it pretty maneuverable and still stable. The further back you get, if I understand it correctly, the more stable you will be, but the less maneuverable you will be. Now, if you put the center of lift and the center of mass together, you're going to be extremely unstable, if not unflyable, but extremely maneuverable if you can fly it. And then the center of lift in front of the center of mass should almost guarantee that the aircraft won't be controllable. And I don't know if that's the same as it used to be or what since the 1.0 release, but That's a good indicator. Okay, so looks like I'm not even touching anything, and the aircraft's pitching down. I'm at 11,000 meters, thereabouts. So it looks like I may have hit my service ceiling, because I'm actually, my angle of attack is high, meaning my nose is high. But as you can see, my direction of flight, my flight indicator is showing me that I'm actually in a descent. My rate of climb is actually climbing, was actually negative. Now it looks like I'm holding steady. So without any input, I've leveled off thereabouts at about 11,000 feet. I'm max throttle and I'm only going about 60 meters per second. So reality, I guess that's, God, I don't even know what that is in knots. Let's do a conversion real quick. And I'm sure there's somebody watching this video that's like, oh, it's whatever. Well, I don't know. I didn't major in aerospace engineering, so. All right, so let's say about 60 meters per second. Okay, it's about 116 knots. Now, as a comparison, to give you an idea, this is supposed to be a Learjet, okay, or modeled after a Learjet, and it is traveling at about 116 knots at about 30,000 feet, maybe a little over that, 33,000 or so. My current meters per second converted, being 116 knots, is a little bit more than the cruising speed of a Cessna 172. Cessna 172 can cruise at about 90 knots, depending, and a little over. I think your max speed is about 120 knots before you want to slow down. Landing speed for a Cessna, glide speed is about 55, 60 knots, somewhere in there, depending on the model. So I'm not really going much faster than that. So obviously this is probably not a very efficient speed or an efficient cruising altitude. However, I'm going to go ahead and pitch down now. And as soon as I pitched down, you saw that my angle of attack dropped. In fact, I've damn near lost controllability. It's very soupy. The air feels very thin. But I can't keep that. I let go of the controls and the nose drops, and SAS is even on. Obviously, my angle of attack is quite severe here. So if I actually seems like it's following the nose pretty well, but the flight director is saying that obviously. Oh, okay, all right, there we go. All right, so I pitched down, managed to bring it down to about 10,000 meters, so about 30,000 feet. Looks like my angle of attack and my flight director are kind of lined up right now. I've increased speed to at about 186 meters per second, which is about 360 knots. That's getting a little bit closer to jet speeds, depending on what application we're talking about. But these were the results I was kind of expecting, so I'm actually pretty happy with them. Let's run another science experiment. Oh, look at that. Okay, Kerbal Highlands, recording various measurements like temperature, pressure, and atmospheric composition. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and transmit that data. It'll probably be a good idea for me to get a set of batteries on here, because that looks like that is eating my electric charge pretty quickly. Alright, well, that's why we do these flights, to test these sorts of things. So obviously you're not going to get but about 14% data from one atmospheric analysis on the battery within the cockpit of a Mark II aircraft. So, kind of covered everything I really wanted to cover. Obviously this back portion here doesn't have a jet fuel or liquid fuel equivalent, so I had to just kind of take the oxidizer out. It's probably a little less efficient than I'd want it to be, but oh well. Alright, so let's go ahead and, oh god, whoa, let's go ahead and start a turn back to KSC, and we'll do a landing. I won't keep you guys too long. Flying is kind of boring. I don't know how tolerable me talking is. So let's see here. I'm trying to do a slow turn. I don't want to really, do the Kerbal style turns where Kerbals need a G suit just to get where they're going. Now, a good turn at altitude would not require me to exchange or lose altitude rather, but it's kind of hard to control, quite frankly. Talking and monitoring that is quite difficult. But I will say, though, that this aircraft is not very stable. It is stable, but it needs to be trimmed quite a bit if I don't fly with SAS. So, for instance, when we get over the mountain range here and approach a little bit closer to KSC, we'll start a slow descent here. But as we get closer and come down to a more a thicker level of atmosphere, I'll turn off the SAS and I'll show you what kind of effects this T-tail configuration have on the airframe itself. So it causes a tendency for this aircraft to pitch nose down when the SAS is off. Now, I want you to notice another thing, that when I'm SAS on or off, regardless, when I'm playing with the pitch right now, I'm just kind of tapping the S key, pitching up, just trying to kind of keep my nose up a little bit here. You'll notice that the tail pitches up as I hit S, as you would expect, but the center line, I guess you would call them ailerons, I didn't configure them to, they do everything, so they're pitch, roll, and yaw, although not very efficient at yaw. But if they're set up to pitch, when I nose up like this, these actually do the opposite. On an aircraft,